Naruto is a series known for its fights and for how strategic they are. The characters have high IQ and they fight like ninjas. I mean, yeah, it's a show about ninjas, so obviously. So today let's rank the 16 highest IQ fights in Naruto. Starting off with number 16, Might Guy vs Madara Uchiha. Now this fight, you may say it's not very strategic, and a lot of people say Naruto got really dumb when the powers got strong because now they just use the powers like powerful laser beams and all that in the war arc, and it's not fun anymore. But this is not true at all. You have to rewatch or reread the series if you think that. I mean, sure, Might Guy himself, not the most strategic fighter. He opened the 8th gate and boom, 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 let's punch as hard as I can, run as fast as I can, and try to blitz Madara. Madara wasn't being that strategic either in that fight because he was just having fun and a good laughter, so he wasn't coming up with very particularly clever counters for Guy's abilities. He was mostly taking the punches and seeing how powerful Guy was in his 8th gate. But the people helping Guy out, Kakashi, Minato, Gaara, and Rock Lee, they were being very clever. And honestly, the tactic they use so that Guy can punch through Madara's Truth Sea Orbs is one of the most hype scenes in the manga. I remember reading this scene for the first time and being so absolutely hyped because of that strategy. Lee tosses the kunai, Minato teleports to the kunai, he grabs the Truth Seeking Orb so Guy can keep going, Kakashi approaches the Truth Seeking Orbs with Gaara-san and then combos them away so that Guy can finally land a direct punch on Madara. It's great, it's clever, and it's so hype. So I'm gonna put it on this list. It's not gonna be very high up because it's a very quick strategy, but it worked against Madara Uchiha, the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, the strongest character in the series. So I might as well mention it here. Number 15, Deidara vs Gaara. Now this fight is clever all the way around. First, Deidara was using his bird to collect intel on the Sand Village, pretending it was actually a normal bird and not a gigantic clay explosive bird. Because you can't really tell the difference. If Deidara's flying really high up, you're not gonna say, oh, that is a summoning bird, not a normal bird. But he didn't count on Gaara knowing that that type of bird didn't exist in the deserts of the Sand Village. So Gaara actually detected the threat and started to fight Deidara. And the fight was pretty good. People kind of underestimate how good that fight was. And also how intelligent Deidara is because he dissected Gaara's powers. He figured out that Gaara's sand that he actually carries on his gourd is much faster than the sand that he uses from the desert itself because it's infused with much more chakra, and he also knew that he had to bypass Gaara's sand somehow. So he tossed a bomb in the Sand Village so that Gaara would have to defend them, and also let Gaara destroy one of his arms so that he could infiltrate his clay explosives into Gaara's own sand so that they can explode Gaara from within, which worked like a charm. Number 14, Kakashi vs Pain. Kakashi starts off this fight by missing a Raikiri on Pain because he wasn't really used to what Pain could do, but then he uses a Lightning Shadow clone to figure out Pain's abilities, and he manages to do so, stunning the Asura Path when the Asura Path pierces through Kakashi's Shadow Clone, and then he comes up with a very clever strategy in combination with Choza and Choji. Kakashi burrows underground and lays chains on the ground so that he can come in and try to slash Tendo with his kunai, but then obviously Tendo uses Shinra Tensei, Kakashi gets blown off. But then Choza and Choji use their meat tanks to try and hit Pain, but then his Shinra Tensei comes out of cooldown, so he manages to block Choza and Choji and blow them away as well. But then they use the chains on the ground to restrain Tendo Pain so that Kakashi can come up with his Raikiri and pierce him when the Shinra Tensei is on cooldown for the second time, and that would have worked if the Asura Path hadn't survived and tanked the Raikiri for Tendo there. Really unlucky for Kakashi, but it shows how intelligent he is. He managed to dissect Tendo's abilities in a few seconds, just from glancing at them a couple of times. And that intel was very important for when Naruto arrived and had to fight against Pain as well, so sure, Kakashi didn't win the fight, but he was very clever here. Number 13, Minato vs Obito. When Obito attacked the Leaf Village, and also Minato, we saw how intelligent Minato was because he was able to dissect how Kamui worked just by seeing it one time. And then he came up with a perfect counter for it, tossing a kunai on Obito's head so he would phase through it, and then the kunai would be on his back so that when Obito materializes himself to touch Minato and suck him into the Kamui dimension, Minato would teleport to that kunai and land a Rasengan on him when he is not phasing. Now, should Obito have anticipated what Minato would have done, because he was Minato's teacher and he knew exactly how Minato's jutsu worked by teleporting to a kunai, which so happened to be right on his back? Yes, he probably should have, but you can give him a discount. I mean, he was 14 years old at the time. He was probably very excited because it was his first big fight, and it was against his sensei, a man he knew was very powerful. So yeah, I mean, Obito wasn't very clever here, but Minato was extremely clever, so I'm gonna put the fights at number 13. Number 12, and this is another one of those fights that, you know, dispels the myth that, oh, there's no strategy at the work when the characters are powerful, because this is bullcrap. And the fight's gonna be Jubito versus Naruto, Sasuke, Minato, and Tobirama. There's so many strategies they use in this fight to fight against Jubito here, but the most iconic one is when Naruto and Sasuke combine their Rasen Shuriken and Amaterasu to make it way more powerful, and they actually hit Minato with it, but then, because Obito was marked by Tobirama's Flying Raijin mark before, Tobirama teleported behind Jubito, touched him, and then Minato swapped places with Jubito by syncing his Flying Raijin with Tobirama's Flying Raijin, so then Sasuke and Naruto actually hit their jutsu on Jubito and not Minato. That's really clever, man. Number 11, Naruto versus Pain. Now, this is a fight that's going to dispel the myth that Naruto is a dum-dum, because he isn't. I mean, he's not book smart, but he's very smart in fights. He uses so many clever tactics in the fight against Pain, using Gamabunta to destroy the animal path, blocking the Renegon's line of sight, using Frog Taijutsu to defeat the Preta Path the first time, and then using his own Sage Mode to defeat the Preta Path for the second time. But the most clever tactic was what he used to defeat the Naraka path, and it would have defeated all the paths if Pain's Shinra Tensei hadn't returned just in time. So Naruto tosses Smoke Bomb so that he is obscured, and then he tosses the Rasen Shuriken from within the Smoke Bomb. The Preta Path, obviously, blocks it and starts to absorb the ninjutsu, but that wasn't a regular Rasen Shuriken. It was a shadow clone transformed into a Rasen Shuriken, so that when the Preta Path absorbed the ninjutsu, he just reverted back to his shadow clone state. And then he was able to tackle the Preta Path, dropping him down so that the real Rasen Shuriken could come in from behind and hit Tendo Pain. And this is when, unfortunately, Shinra Tensei returns and Tendo Pain manages to block the Rasen Shuriken. But then, even before Naruto tossed that Rasen Shuriken, he also tossed another Shadow Clone really high up so that he could, you know, come from above where Pain wasn't really looking and hit the Naraka path from behind. Very clever, layered strategy, really nice from Naruto, our protagonist, who isn't dumb. Only sometimes Naruto's kind of dumb, but I mean, he can't pull himself together. The strategy he used to eventually defeat Pain is also pretty clever, but not as clever as this one, I would say. But this fight, I mean, it's great, and it's overall very intelligent. Number 10, Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and B versus Obito. Kakashi is so freaking smart in this fight, he manages to dissect Kamui completely and come up with a perfect counter for it, his own Kamui. He used it to Kamui one of Naruto's Rasengan, and so he hits Obito with it. But that's not even the most intelligent part of the fight, because he used that same strategy as a fake for the second time when Naruto rushes Obito with the Rasengan. Naruto starts to phase the Rasengan out, but then Kakashi uses Kamui, but Obito thinks he actually destroyed the Shadow Clone. But no, Kakashi didn't use the Kamui on Naruto's Rasengan. He used it on the entire Shadow Clone and sent Naruto into the Kamui dimension so that Naruto could actually hit Obito from within and then unmask him. This fight's pretty great and very strategic. Kakashi is very smart here, which is always nice to see. So yeah, really cool fight. Another fight in the work, which was very strategic, and like a lot of people like to say that they're all dumb fights. Number 9, Shino versus Kankuro. Shino completely dissects Kankuro's abilities. He restrains the puppet's movements with his own bugs. And then he uses a very clever strategy to catch Kankuro from behind, using a female bug which is going to attract the males, and, well, they defeat Kankuro using that strategy. The way Shino masked how he put the female bug on Kankuro, pretending to throw a punch but missing, was very clever, and Kankuro didn't suspect a thing. Kankuro, who isn't exactly dumb, and also Shino was using his bugs to eat Kankuro's chakra threads, a very good counter and smart way to fight against a puppet master. So yeah, Shino, he is really smart, and he deserves to be on this list. Number 8, Sasuke versus Danzo. Now, Sasuke manages to defeat Danzo with 10 minutes worth of Izanagis, 10 Sharingan eyes on his arm, and Sasuke deduced exactly what they did and countered Danzo appropriately. Sasuke understood that even though Danzo was essentially immortal for 10 minutes, Sasuke should press him on because otherwise he would be at a great disadvantage, having burned through a lot of chakra during the fight, so he couldn't stop now. And then he cast a genjutsu on Danzo so that Danzo would think he still had some time left for Izanagi because he made Danzo see one of the Sharingan eyes opened. And it's very clever because Sasuke knew he could put Danzo under a genjutsu when he launched a genjutsu on him, made him see Itachi for, just a few seconds, but that's all Sasuke needed. As Sasuke himself told Danzo, well, my genjutsu is not nearly as powerful as Itachi's Tsukiyomi, but it's not how powerful the genjutsu is, it's how you use it. And because he made Danzo believe with his genjutsu that he still had time with Izanagi, Danzo was reckless, and because of that, Sasuke was able to catch him with a sword. Well, after Danzo was able to capture Karin, so Sasuke had to pierce through Karin and Danzo again, but still, it was very clever when Sasuke used that genjutsu on Danzo. Number 7, Shino versus Zaku, another Shino fight. When the fight started, we thought Zaku was really messed up in the arms. First, he had both his arms unutilized because of what Sasuke did to him in the Forest of Death, and then he says, oh, I kinda can move once, so be careful, Shino. So Shino traps him, he sends his army of bugs to corner Zaku, and then Shino would attack Zaku from the other side, forcing Zaku to choose, oh, should I counter Shino's attack or the bug's attack? He only had one arm, so, well, he had to make a choice. But that was not what Shino really intended, because he knew Zaku's arms were all good. Zaku was just lying, so when he pulls off his second arm, oh, it's actually good, I'm gonna aim at Shino and at the army, well, Shino was ready, and when Zaku uses his blasts of sound, his arms exploded because Shino clogged Zaku's armholes with his bugs. And yeah, the arms, they literally are blown off Zaku's body. It's really gruesome. But very clever from Shino. It shows how ready he was, and he was expecting Zaku was, actually good in the arms. So much so that Shino clogged both of the arms, even the one who was quote-unquote still bad. Number 6, Itachi versus Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, and even Guy. When Itachi is introduced in the series and arrives to the Leaf Village, he fights against several Jonin, the main team senseis essentially, and Itachi was finessing all of them. When Kakashi arrives, he actually sends a shadow clone so that he could stop Itachi from killing Kurenai. Itachi catches that shadow clone from behind, but then actually Itachi was also using a shadow clone, then he explodes the shadow clone. It's a lot of strategies. He also pulls out his shuriken to distract Kakashi from the fact that he was casting a water style jutsu, and Kakashi almost is caught by the jutsu. Everything happens so fast, but you can see how much of a genius the guy is. Number 5, Shikamaru versus Temari. And this is really the first time we see how clever Shikamaru really is. The strategy he uses against Temari is intelligent, and for a guy that only has one jutsu that's not terribly powerful, just the shadow possession jutsu by itself is not very powerful. It can restrain the movements of somebody else, but that's pretty much it. You can also make the person imitate you, but you can't really deal damage, and what Shikamaru achieves with that jutsu is just insane. It's a 3-layer strategy. So first, Shikamaru retreats to the area of the arena with trees and shade. He uses his shadow possession jutsu, and Temari retreats from it. She draws a line on the arena ground so she knows how far the shadow reaches, and, well, she would know how far she should stay away from Shikamaru. And then Shikamaru waits a bit and launches another shadow. But because Shikamaru waited, the shade in the arena got longer because the sun set a little bit, so he could stretch his shadow more, forcing Temari to retreat even further. But there was more. Shikamaru used his own vest, tying it on a kunai to make it as a parachute, and then form another shadow in the arena so that his own shadow could stretch even further. Temari managed to avoid that, but that was all a ploy from Shikamaru. He wanted to direct Temari's movements close to the holes on the ground that Naruto made in the fight against Neji. And that's when Shikamaru caught her, because he used the holes to stretch his shadows even more, because obviously the holes, they have shadows, so he can actually pass the shadow through the hole and catch Temari from behind. She didn't even see it happening. This is a really cool fight and very overlooked because the stakes are not terribly high. I mean, it's just a fight in the Chunin exams. And it's funny because Shikamaru gives up in the end. Oh, I don't have chakra and I'm kind of bored. Really cool fight. Number 4, Neji versus Kidomaru. There's a lot of strategy in this fight as well. First, Neji is the one who fights him because he can counter the webs with his gentle fist. He lands the palms on Kidomaru, but he can use those glands underneath his skin to secrete that weird thing that's gonna block all the attacks. It's like a bodily fluid that hardens, and Neji couldn't pierce through that. And after that, well, Kidomaru knew, oh, I can't get close to this guy, so he started to play the range game. Staying on the canopy of the trees, using long-ranged attacks to try and get Neji, but Neji had his rotation, so Kidomaru's attacks weren't working. So then he has to use his massive spider summon to actually use smaller spiders that, well, the big one kind of poops out, and they use this web to try and entangle Neji's rotation, so Neji has to switch from the rotation to his fists, but then he wasn't fast enough because Kidomaru was also tossing his kunais at the same time and Neji was getting hit. And while Kidomaru was doing that, he was trying to figure out the weakness of the Byakugan, which he did. When he used the second stage of the curse mark, because his kunais weren't piercing Neji very far, they weren't doing too much damage, he had to use something stronger, so he chose the bow and arrow from his second stage. He knew what he had to do. He had to aim at the Byakugan's weak point, the blind spot, which is right behind Neji. A spot where Neji wouldn't be able to see the arrow coming from. However, Neji was aware of that weakness, so he sent chakra to that point specifically, which he knew Kidomaru would aim for to divert the trajectory of the arrows, and if not for that, the arrows would have killed Neji. Sure, he took several powerful hits from the arrows, but he survived because he was able to divert them enough so that they wouldn't hit vital spots. And then because Kidomaru was using his web to guide the arrows so that he could hit Neji with 100% precision, Neji figured out a way to defeat Kidomaru from afar, even though he himself didn't have a ranged jutsu. He sent his own chakra through the web, using his gentle fist to attack Kidomaru from very far away. And that's how Neji defeated him. This fight's actually really underrated, and it's one of the best fights in Naruto Part 1 and even the Naruto series. It's definitely the best Neji fight. And the way they go about the jutsus and everything, how Kishimoto developed these powers so that they can interact in very interesting ways with each other, is just amazing. Number 3, Shikamaru versus Hidan. This was a really cool one because Shikamaru not only defeats Hidan, but while doing so, he also destroys one of Kakuzu's hearts and helps Kakashi a lot there, otherwise Kakashi would have died, and well, therefore he helps in the overall fight against Kakuzu. Because Shikamaru knew exactly what Hidan would do when they fought for the second time. He came up with a strategy to steal Kakuzu's blood when Kakashi snuck behind him, and he used Kakuzu's own blood pretending he got hit by Hidan so that Hidan would sacrifice one of Kakuzu's lives. He used his opponent's abilities against them perfectly and absolutely finessed Hidan in every way possible by trapping him with the paper bombs and those threads and then using that hole in the ground to bury him forever. That was just very clever. Number 2, Shikamaru versus Tayuya. Now the levels of strategy Shikamaru reaches in this fight are pretty ludicrous. First of all, he comes up with a plan for the exact number of paper bombs, of kunais, and of flashbangs he had available in his arsenal at the time. he times them really perfectly in that very specific sequence, and then he used the flashbangs to extend his own shadow when he uses the shadow possession jutsu, so they can actually catch Tayuya's summonings on it. And then he turns the summons against Tayuya, but then Tayuya just unsummons them, but Shikamaru predicted that. That was just a fake so that Shikamaru himself could come close to her and try to finish her off with the shadow asphyxiation jutsu. Unfortunately, Shikamaru lacked the chakra, and the second stage of the curse mark gave Tayuya a lot of raw strength to resist that. But I mean, the strategy in of itself was really damn clever. And number 1 is gonna be Sakura versus Ino. The way Ino used her hair to catch Sakura. I'm kidding, it's not that one. I'm just kidding, guys. Don't dislike the video. Actually, like the video because that really helps me out. Number 1's gonna be Sasuke Uchiha versus Deidara the Beast. This fight has so many layers of strategy, and it's such an overlooked fight because it's so great and amazing, and Sasuke is really intelligent here. Because first, he comes up with a hypothesis that, oh, maybe my lightning style can defuse the bombs, because he used his Chidori needles to deflect some of the bombs, and some of them land close to Tobi, so Deidara didn't explode them. But Sasuke didn't know if Deidara didn't do that because they were close to Tobi, or because he just couldn't do it because they were diffused. So he still had to work on the hypothesis. Then, when Tobi hid a lot of mines underground, and Deidara was using his C2 dragon, there was a perfect chance for Sasuke to test that hypothesis. When Deidara tossed a massive explosion that Sasuke had to tank and actually block with his curse mark wing, he tossed his sword laced with some lightning style right into one of the mines because he could see the mines because of the Sharingan, and then he noticed the mine didn't explode. But then, so that he wouldn't give his strategy away, he used the sword as a foothold, pretending he tossed the sword to get a foothold and not to test if the mines would explode or not, to go and jump, slashing Deidara's C2 dragon and dropping him down, after he tossed two shuriken directing Deidara on top of Sasuke's own sword so that he would be closer to the dragon when he made the jump. And because Sasuke figured that out, he was able to counter C4 Karura because he could see the nano-explosive cloud coming towards him, and he used Genjutsu on Deidara twice to fool him and make him think, oh, Sasuke was disintegrated by my jutsu, so I won the fight! And then in the end, he was clever enough to use a reverse summoning jutsu and escape Deidara's final C0 explosion. This fight is absolutely great, and it's the most strategic fight in the series. You definitely should rewatch or reread that fight if you haven't in a long time. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and like the video because, as I said, it really helps me with the algorithm. Also watch this other cool Naruto video right here for more cool Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching.